frivolous young men and their devilish fashions.
Fashion and the ways that people adorn themselves throughout history have a huge impact on how people in that culture perceive each other, and it tells something about what their society is structured like. For all three cultures that were here in Virginia, the English, the Powhatan, and West Central Africans, clothing helped distinguish rank and ideas about gender and the social structure. What if there was some type of fashion so out there, so wild, that it threatened the entire structure of your society? Well, that is what English Puritans believed about the fashion that our friend Fred here is wearing, this Lovelock in his hair. They believed that this style came from very devious, even devilish sources, and they wanted to stamp it out because it had become so popular in England. And what's really fascinating about this style, not only because it's so striking, Fred here has one long piece of hair hanging over the left side on the side of his heart, but the rest of his hair in the time period would have been short, so it's very unusual. Why would they have thought this would cause so much concern and so much trouble for England? Well, that's because writers of the time period in the 17th century, writers such as William Prynne and Francis Higginson, these were Puritan writers, they acknowledged that this style came from Virginia. It came from the native peoples here in Virginia and had been adopted by these fashionable English gentlemen. So they actually believe that it came all the way back from when the English first tried to settle in North America in Roanoke in the 1580s. And it caught on so quickly, this style had swept the nation of England, and all of their fashionable gentlemen were trying to wear this style. But why was it so concerning? Sure, it's unusual, but at least the way that William Prynne writes it in 1628, he wrote an entire treatise, 63 pages, railing against this style because he believed it was literally dangerous for English people. And he wrote this treatise called The Unloveliness of Lovelocks, or a summary discourse proving the wearing and nourishing of a lock or lovelock to be altogether unseemly and unlawful to Christians. And this is because, as he heard the story told, this style was introduced to the Powhatan by their main deity, Oki. He actually wears this style himself, and he instructed the Powhatan people to wear their hair in this way. So in the minds of Puritans like William Prynne, anything that comes from something other than God, their English God, is going to be from the devil, or the agent of the devil, which they believed that Oki would have been. So by following something, having English Christians follow something that doesn't come from their Christian God, they believed that it was, unchristian and then for sinful. It had its birth, its source, its pedigree from the very devil himself. Must needs be odious, unlawful, and abominable unto Christians. So he's using very, very strong language about how dangerous this style is. And like I said, he goes on for 63 pages outlining the various reasons he gives for why English Christians should not be wearing this style. But it's not just because this style comes from another source than their Christian God. There is also a deep concern that having men be so caught up in their physical appearance, in the kind of maintenance of their hair, that it was making them into women in a way, because it was women who were weak to the pride of vanity and were very concerned with their appearance. So the fact that it was causing gentlemen to be this concerned with their appearance was also very concerning, because it was clashing with the English idea of binary gender roles. So William Prynne, again, says that men are wholly degenerated and metamorphosed into women, and that they're womanish, sinful, and unmanly, crisping, curling, flouncing, powdering, and nourishing of their locks and hairy excrements. Yikes. So all of the, they would curl the lock or they would crimp the lock the same way that we have crimping and curling irons. They had ones that would be heated over coals to put curl and crimp in the hair if you didn't have a natural wave like Fred here does. And then they would powder that hair as well. This was all seen as something that very vain women would do. So the fact that men were starting to do it was very concerning, primarily to Puritans like William Prynne and Francis Higginson, who wrote his New England Plantation in 1630, but acknowledged again the idea that this style came specifically from Virginia. Oftentimes we talk a lot about the way that Native peoples here were using and adapting European fashions or materials like wool and copper and different things like that for their uses. And this style of the Lovelock is one of the rarer instances where we see English people adopting and adapting Powhatan styles, because when the English came here, they really weren't looking to take on the native modes of dress or house styles, because they believed that theirs were superior and theirs were the ones that needed to be put onto the land here. So the fact that the English gentlemen are so inspired by this style really says something. And this style continues well into the 17th century, up into the 1630s and 40s even. We see it still existing in portraits of very elite men. So writers like William Prynne and Francis Higginson didn't really get their way immediately. It eventually fell out of fashion, but not for the reasons that William Prynne and Francis Higginson were concerned about. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this interesting historical tidbit focusing on some of the cultures that are here at Jamestown. Please like this video, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below for us and we'll get back to you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you'll be up to date on any future videos, and we'll see you next time.